Well, howdy folks. Stanley Human here with the Tapp-iN 2x2. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. I'm here at a park in Boulder, Colorado. Got a couple people here who've joined us, and we just want to get this whole thing out for you guys so you understand what tapping is and how you can use it for yourself and others. So the first thing that I want everybody to know about is how tapping started, right? Tapping was discovered by Dr. Callahan and his wife, who's also Dr. Callahan. Actually, she's a widow. The first doctor's gone. But what happened was he had this. Come on down. He had this patient, talking about Dr. Callahan and the beginnings of tapping, who was definitely afraid of water. It was the weirdest phobia of all time. Like, she had to go around puddles. She couldn't get near a pool. And he even had a pool in his house where he did his therapy. So he discovers tapping, and they find a tapping point in 7 days that just wipes out this girl's problem that they hadn't been able to take care of in 25 years of what I call yappy therapy now. And I mean, like, when it happened, she ran into that pool area in the house, and he's like, "You can't swim," you know? And she's like, "I'm not crazy," you know? But then what happened is in the next 30 days, he cured all of his patients and suddenly had no psychiatric, practice left. And the American Psychiatric Association saw this, and they sued him over the use of the word cure. And he won. And so he is the only person, this is the only thing in U.S. psychiatric history ever legally allowed to use the word cure. Okay? So this is no joke. And then after that, Gary Craig studied at the University of Florida for 12 years, and they declared it a science. Okay? So I've used it with hundreds of PTSD soldiers, including Special Forces guys that have major firefights in their head, and I'm telling you, it works. I've never seen it not work in a soldier who did the work, and soldiers do the work, okay? This stuff is dramatically life-saving, okay? There was a guy who I was working with up in the Portland area. He was a bus driver, and his roommate had PTSD badly. So Sarge had it, had his own. Well, he decides he's going to drive on the 4th of July, and the fireworks go off, and he finds himself like wanting to run red lights with a bus full of people. So he pulls over, and he does the tapping that he remembers to teach his roommate. Chills himself completely out, stops the reaction, finishes his route, no problem. Okay? Could have been a really bad situation. But tapping is simple, it's easy, but it's the most powerful thing that we have in psychotherapy. Okay? So this will get rid of physical pain, phobias, traumas, PTSD, the whole deal, okay? There is no reason, since we have a science, since Gary Craig studied it for 12 years at the University of Florida and declared it a science, there's no reason for us to have PTSD in our society anymore. There's no reason for you to have it in yourself, okay? Now, saying that PTSD.fund wants to get rid of PTSD in all of our society, right, is, this great and focused thing, right? But at the same time, it's kind of like saying, I want to clean all children's clothes once and for all. They're all going to be dirty again tomorrow, okay? Traumas keep happening, okay? But if we have a way to stay clear once we are clear, right, life becomes something different. Right? So what they put together at the at the University of Florida is a thing called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. And it's a sequence of tapping points, okay, that we kind of call a cure-all, all right? But if this doesn't get rid of what's going on, you call Mrs. Callahan, Mrs. Dr. Callahan, right, who still is in charge of the original thought field therapy, TFT. She'll measure the perturbations in your thought field. She'll give you a sequence you never could have thought of in a million years, and your problem will be gone. So at the end of today's session, you will know how to do EFT, so you have that in your arsenal. I'm going to teach you a couple anytime, any moment points that you can use when stress is happening, okay? And share a little bit about what has happened with me and how there's some things in the EFT routine that we do a little different than everybody else, okay? Like, for instance, when we're doing the psychological setup statements in the beginning, there are 3 of them. And people will mostly say, this problem, blank sucks, but I love and accept myself. Well, we also say honor and respect, forgive and appreciate in the next 2. And it seems to have a more cleansing effect. We also don't start off with the words, even though. It gives too much power to the past. It makes the problem you're getting rid of seem permanent when it's just stuck energy and it's about to be gone. Okay? That's why I call this PTSD removal. What you're doing is, like it says in the Bible, Jesus talks about the burden of our sins, that weightiness. It's stuck energy. That's all it is. And so once you dissipate it, it's gone. These special forces guys with the firefights in their head, the video goes away. Or it becomes like that old fix, music video. It's all black and white. But either way, the emotion of it is gone. In other words, the weight of it, the attached energy of it is gone. Now, this is all absolute science. It's not mystic frou-frou crap, okay? We have in 25 years in physics proved just about everything the mystics said was correct.
So are you going along the notion that it's the thought that these specific charged energy points are stored where you are tapping, or like along the meridians of it?
Okay.
What is the relation between the points and the actual energy stored, and how is it actually being transferred out?
Okay, so that's what I was getting at is that, no, that's awesome. I'm glad, because, see, we now have instruments that measure quantum flow. You can't go get it off the shelf at Eckerd's, right? But we have mapped the body. And we now know for a fact that in parallel with your veins, your nerves, and your lymph system are these invisible channels through which crystalline energy flows. And guess where they are? Exactly where the Chinese have told us for the last 5,000 years. Right? So this is real. Okay? And so what happens is those particles of energy are getting stuck at meridian points. Okay? That have to do with the trauma, especially subconscious or below conscious trauma, and all of the the words and atmospheric things happening when those things are going on. Okay? And they come up. These scripts, these words that were somebody else's in these kind of moments in your life, they come up. All right? The PTSD soldier, he's having a bad day. He's walking along cussing, but somebody at the convenience store thinks he's crazy and calls the cops. Now he's got guns pointed at him. Talk about triggering stuff, right? That's why you hear about it. These guys are getting killed. But the big thing is 22 of them, 22 veterans a day are committing suicide. We've lost more soldiers to suicide since Vietnam than we lost in Vietnam. Okay? It's staggering. You don't hear about that every day. You hardly hear about the shootings in Chicago, but you certainly don't hear about this every single day. And it doesn't have to be happening. So it's important that you learn it for you, but you also learn it for the next guy. That's why we call these a Tapp-in 2x2, right? Like I'll do them for firefighters, and they'll each bring a firefighter, and next time they'll, or whatever, okay? Some of the ones that we've done in the past, I leave online. Those are the ones who are kind of the most controversial ones, because in this, guys, we're bringing that. You have to have the courage to bring that trauma, that thought, back into the thought field one last time, so you dissipate it. Okay, so take some courage. But you'll find that as you go through your inventory of the past, when you pull on one thing, 10 will come out. Because a lot of this has to do with repetition of trauma. All right? With that, refeeding of or it's like Bart Simpson, out, out, out. You know what I mean? And through our life we do this. You seeing yourself do that? Is that what that smile was? Yeah, we all do it, right? We all, as we go through, we kind of re-injure ourselves in the same place.
So what, so do you feel like it removes physical blockages?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it just, do you feel like it's more emotional?
I never used it so much for physical pain until last year's summit, and I had some pain in my foot that was starting, and I tapped on it, and it was amazing the relief of it. So
I'm super I used to be a professional BMX rider, and I had a lot of injuries, and my spine is like a little. It's like my bone structure is a little off.
Gotcha.
Because I've just broken a lot of bones, and they don't feel the same. So I feel like I have certain. I know what tapping is.
Right.
I'm sure there's a lot I can learn, and I do a lot of body work type stuff to myself.
Okay. Are you doing any of the cross hemisphere or DSMR stuff? Because we kind of take this to that level next.
I think I just have read about it really briefly. Like certain spots. Right. I know that seem like they feel good.
So camera people or people on the camera, if you can't hear it, former BMX rider, lots of broken bones, lots of trauma. He knows tapping, but he hasn't really focused on the use of tapping for his physical pain. One thing I want to say to you is, you know who Martin Ashton is?
No.
He's the BMX trail rider who has got in a wreck and he's paralyzed from the waist down. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know any racers.
Okay, so they made a 3-wheeler for him, and if you see here, I have my hand crank 3-wheeler. Okay. So we take this 22 miles every month for PTSD awareness and to raise money, for the fund. And one of the things we want to do is all this is about making it trail worthy, so people that have mobility issues can go have fun, right? Have a thing called the Trike Force, right? Yeah. And so, Martin Ashton and what he's doing is one of our inspirations. But I invite you to check him out, and
Yeah, okay. He's not the guy that rides skate parks in his wheelchair, is he?
That sounds like he would, yeah. But so one of the things is, one of my two senseis, the younger one, he found Qigong as a martial arts instructor in Chuck Norris methods for over 20 years. Had a debilitating back injury, crawling around his house, $90,000 Beverly Hills surgery failed, all this stuff. But when he found Qigong and got together with my other sensei, Peter Ragnar, this other guy's Tristan Truscott, I mean, he does spin kicks in the air to this day, but he went from that crawling around to being able to do anything physically. And his wife is a world-class dancer, and they're both Qigong senseis, and I'm telling you, it's amazing. It's amazing. when you combine tapping and qigong together, which is what we've done in this TapQi thing, it so much healing happens. Really, you can get through this pain.
Things to heal my body. I don't have any pain anymore.
Good. I'm glad.
Except unless I live out of a backpack, so I do get sore from like that. But
so you can use this for functionality.
But I still have what I was going to say. I don't have pain, but I still have mobility.
Right.
Things, and I wonder, and it's like I'm to the point where I'm wondering again, like, is it just like structure, like literally like structure, like the bones, because you know, like a boxer, right?
So as we go along, what you'll discover is this has to do more with polarity and the storage of energy within your body.
It's all connected, right? So I'm trying to think about what this could do to serve it.
So what this would do to serve you is if you learn the tapping and then learn the qigong part next, okay, then you can both relieve your pain, have the flow of energy that you need, and then work on having a energy level stored in your body that heals your bones, okay? I used to do stunts. I've taken a beam across the back, et cetera, okay? I understand where you're coming from, all right? And nothing that I've ever experienced has ever come close to what we're teaching here in TapQi. Okay? So first, let's work on the clearing part, because even inflammation, okay, this triggers a lot of flow along the lines that have all four of those systems together. Okay, this triggers a lot of flow, including getting rid of your inflammation. One of the things that you naturally do, I don't know if you know this, but your inflammation is being reduced by the fact that you spend so much time grounding.
Yeah, definitely.
You're grounding for sure, which is also a sign.
That's why I'm.
Okay,
That's why
so
I'm here, not down there, right?
right. Okay, so those two anytime points that I talked about. So, say you're at a meeting and you're feeling nervous. Maybe it's like the job interview of a lifetime. All right. So you take your fingers and you rub the fronts of your kneecaps, your whole kneecap area, but especially the fronts. And you will, like, that was a hardly voluntary breath just then. All right. Okay. Now, when I had a heart attack in a blizzard, which we'll get to later, okay, I took these three fingers and there's a point above your heart, especially on men, up here, you can feel it's harder than the rest of the upper breast. And you rub that, you'll also feel that relief come up your back. But I did this so much I put a bruise here. But thank God I did, right? Because I'm still here. Yeah, I was in a blizzard for 7 You didn't hear the story. You just heard it. Had a heart attack in a blizzard where I couldn't get to a doctor for 7 days. And by the time the blizzard was over, right, didn't need the doctor. For real. All I had was a wood stove, tapping, and qigong. That's it. And I'm telling you, I started off with, I could not lift this arm. I couldn't move my left arm. 24 hours later, I was here. 48 hours, I was here. And 7 days was up. All I needed was a checkup.
So how often were you rubbing that point?
During that?
Yeah.
Well, in that critical moment, I was doing it pretty constantly.
Yeah.
You know, and I was doing everything I had to be calm.
Yeah.
And that doing the tapping really released a lot of stuff that I think was leading to whatever made this happen, right? I mean, I was in the middle of moving out. It was very stressful, money things. And I remember that I'd gotten a free tap in an email from Nick Ortner about financial stress. And I think I probably listened to that tap 10 times in that 48 hours, But I was mostly doing my own stuff. One of the things, all of this knowledge for me came from a brain injury. And during that brain injury, I decided, basically God, life, however you think of it, gives you that choice. Well, the choice is the answer to one question, but in every situation, which is this happening for me or is this happening to me? And somehow in a brain injury, where I could look up for 1 to 4 seconds and have no idea where in the hell I was, right? Asking people for directions constantly, right? I said, this is happening for me somehow. And out of me, very, very soon after that, came these 4 affirmational sentences that I call the first 4. They're really simple. I feel good. Today is a wonderful day. My life is full of joy. Blessed, great, and fantastic things are here for me now. In other words, so you, your day, your life, energetic donut, back to the now, right? And at one point, this guy comes up to me and he says, you know, that's almost word for word an ancient Tibetan prayer, which I've verified since. But I didn't know that, right? So I don't know where the universe fed this to me, but some weird things have happened. I used to put it on 3x5 cards and give it to everybody. And I even drove a car across America giving ride shares and seating the first 4. One day I'm online, some guy in Wales, I posted this in a group, he comes on and goes, oh man, I've been doing that for months. It led to the greatest breakthrough of my life. And I'm like, Richard, I don't even know who in the hell you are, right? And this thing went through like 4 hands from one of the passengers that was an international person during one of these joy and happiness tours, right? Right? By the way, the theme of today is never let them steal your joy. Okay? And that's what this is really all about. Okay? Happiness, money can buy you happiness. It can't buy you joy. Right? And one of the things about having joy and maintaining that state is to maintain that flow. Right? That's what tithing is. You're giving and receiving so that and asking so that your tube is not corked at either end and you have that flow. Right? So one of the first things that we do when we're doing the tapping and the EFT routine is we do the polarity thing. We get our polarity straight, okay? So I want everybody to, the karate chop point, all right? You can hit it on your fingers or hit your fingers on it, whatever. You can do both hands like I do, or you can do one. And so these are those 3 statements where you're going, this problem sucks, but I love and accept myself, right? So you can pick something right now and say that out loud, whisper it to yourself, just say it in your head, but say the I love and accept myself part out loud. So, but I love and accept myself. This problem sucks my ass, and the problem is, but I honor and respect myself. I hate it when this problem causes blank, 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 but I forgive and appreciate myself. Now, we only do that then. Now we're going to the eyebrow point, which is if you start in the middle with these 3, it's where these 2 end up, right there, okay? Doesn't matter which side or which hand you do it with. Then side of eye is the bone between these 2, the temple and the eye side, right? Underneath the eye is the top of your cheekbone, right? And then nose is that right there in the cleft. I use 3, or the chin right here in the cleft. Now, then you're going to the funny, or to to the collarbone. So you go to the ball, you go out and down, and you feel that meaty part. You're hitting that. Now the bra line is next. I call this the man spot because this is where men trap most of their energy. And when we get into the Qigong routine in later, training sessions, you'll see that in the morning, I'm beating the hell out of this with my hand, all right? Okay, and then from there you go into the top of the head. I call this the baby spot. You know, you can do a circle, do both sides. All right.
Let out a stream of energy.
All right, you do that. He's fine. So when you're doing it, you can do it, like I said, either hand, both. And I like to do it with both hands when I'm doing this a lot, because what I'll start doing is doing the cross hemisphere stuff, where I'm doing that, right? And it doesn't really matter how you do that. I mean, you can also add the cross hemisphere thing by simply, when you're doing it, cross your legs, right? And then halfway through, cross the other way.
Is it like a specific order that you should do?
Well, that is a sequence, the EFT thing that we just did.
Yeah.
And so you do the karate chop point, then you do 2 or 3 of those cycles, right? So 3 setup statements and then 2 or 3 cycles. And when you're going through the cycles, this is when you're really bringing that up into the thought field. So as you're tapping, you're saying, you know, I mean, like, don't mince words. Cuss, you know, get it out, bring it up, have that emotion and the aggravation into it. I can't stand it when blah, blah, blah at work does blah, blah, blah. It costs me 2 hours of my day every time, blah, blah, blah. But I'm letting it go. Blah, 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 blah. But I'm dissipating it. I'm releasing it. Okay? And if you do that, and then take 3 deep breaths, you will notice a difference between where that problem was in stress level to you to where it is now. Okay? So some practitioners like to say, name this, you know, trauma from 1 to 10. You say, oh, it's a 9. And then when you're done with a routine, they say, what is it now? And you say, oh, it's a 5 or it's a 4, right? And then you tap some more. If you ever can't get down to a 0, that's when you're calling up Mrs. Callahan, okay? All right? That's when you're going to thoughtfieldtherapy.com, all right? But in the meantime, the EFT thing should serve you well, okay? Are there any questions about it? I mean, we can pick a problem. One of the things that you'll learn is as you do your stuff, you can do what's called sympathetic tapping, where you're tapping on your body but thinking about somebody else's problem. And because of your emotional connection to that person, okay, you can have their stuff go down, their stress go down. All right. Which brings me to one of the things I wanted to tell you guys about, which is a thing they're now calling a radical forgiveness. All right. And what this came from is, you know, the Bulletproof Coffee guy, Dave Asprey. He has this thing they call 40 years of Zen, where you're supposed to be able to reach the level of a monk who's, you know, meditated for 40 years in a weekend, right? So they kind of put you in this egg thing, and you're in there. They've got, you know, the nodes all over you, checking your different brain, you know, levels and stuff like that. And this one lady, man, she was just having these nice alpha wave, you know, things happening. And so they questioned her, what was going on in the egg? She goes, well, I figured I had the time, I would just start forgiving people. So they made this a part of the routine. And the guy, Vishon from Mind Valley, comes. And he's doing it, and there's this one guy he can't forgive, right? So he saves him for last. This guy had run Mind Valley, India, had stole $250,000 from him. He had treated him like a family member. And as soon as he got caught, he starts bad-mouthing Vishon all over, you know, the world. And so he really had a lot. But when he was able to forgive him, the highest alpha wave ratings they'd ever recorded on Vishon. All right, so Vishon goes back and has the people at Mind Valley do it. And there's one guy who has somebody he can't forgive. He comes back with his phone to Vishon and says, here, watch this video. The guy had been able to forgive this guy the night before. This guy was a family member who had 30 years earlier, when he was a child, had molested him, hadn't talked to him since. What Vishon then watched was that guy had made a video and sent it to his victim, admitting what he had done and apologizing for it. And the only thing that had happened was this guy had forgiven it. That night, and then it arrives later that night or the next morning. Hadn't talked to him in 30 years. All right, so I was in San Diego, and it's really freaky how things happen, you know. I was outside this coffee shop on the back porch talking to these guys who do DSMR, and I was telling them about this radical forgiveness thing, and how this man that I love, one of his redheaded sons, had been coming through the coffee shop, and it seemed like he was dipping and diving and avoiding me, and it was really offensive because we had nothing but great times, and and so I'm telling them that 2 hours earlier, I've been sitting on the porch by myself going, I forgive him, I forgive me, I forgive him, I forgive me. And while I'm telling him this, that guy comes over with his hand out going, Steamer, I had no idea it was you. You were out of context. I would never avoid you. Dude, you saved my father's business. I love you. Right in front of these DSMR people. And I was telling them the story. 2 hours. We all have an energetic connection to the people that we love, that we care about, that we interact with. Okay? And I want you to consider that the world's tallest, most powerful tree, the redwood, has some of the shallowest roots there are, because it goes in and then they go out and they connect to all the other redwood trees in the grove. All of the redwood trees that you see in a grove are one tree. Up in above Portland, just as you go into Washington State, there's a salmon creek. We did a mastermind in this house, and we found this tree over this salmon creek, 100-foot tree, no ground underneath it. The root ball reaching down to the salmon creek. And it's just like, oh, you know? And then you look close and you saw that there was this one solid trunk coming out at 90 degrees into the cliffside, where there was another redwood connected to 3 more connected to a field of them. They were all holding this tree up with no ground underneath it. And that's what happens when you mastermind with other people, through your heart. Okay? This is why joy is so important, because you cannot have a clean vessel. You know, difference between you as a clean vessel and you full of or covered in muck is the difference between dong and boom. Okay, your DNA vibration gets affected. Your habitual rhythm becomes something that has nothing to do with you. Okay, and that's the thing here. There's the past and all the bullshit, and then there's you. All that other stuff is stuck energy. And that's what happens when you do this tapping and you go through your inventory and you get all this stuck stuff off of and out of you. You feel
like you literally get rid of memories or something, or is it just like you're not attached to it?
It's more like you're not attached to it. Remember when I was talking about the firefights in the special forces, you know, has these things that make it so they won't sleep at home. Right. They won't go all the way home. Okay, when that is gone, they might still see the images, but they won't be full of color. They won't be full of emotion. All that emotion that will be drained out of it. It'll just be a car passing by. You still know it. You still remember it. A lot of things, it's gone. You have no use of memory for it. Okay, you don't have that strong imprint on the back of your brain. One of the things that I want you guys to be armed with is when we're doing brain injury recovery, one of the first things we teach people is that you need to discern where the thought, quote unquote, is coming from, right? So we say, always be determined to know when you have forgotten something, and that you can injure the brain, but you cannot injure the mind. This is the thing that I discovered in my brain injury. I was watching myself go through the brain injury, and one day I'm like, there's a duality here. What is happening? How can I be watching myself while I'm doing it? And then I discovered this, right? So these thoughts that are not ours, that don't come from our spirit through our mind into this interface of the mind and brain. They come from the body. They come from traumas, okay? And if you can discern where they come from, you can know what is you, and listen to you, and you can figure out what is, like Scrooge said, oh, this could be a bad bowl of gruel, right? And if you'll do that, if you will really pay attention to what's going by in your head, okay, and the source thereof, within your psyche, you will be able to become clean and clear. All right? All sorts of things, from physical pain to past tragic, really horrible things.
Can you give me an example?
Mother Earth can take every bit of it that you have. Every electron you have, she can take it. What'd you ask?
Like when you're saying, like, discerning thoughts, like what, so you're talking about like thoughts about your trauma, or like
okay,
just
say
negative thoughts.
Okay, say you have preservatives or toxins or past drug experiences in you. Okay, well, the have waste theory says your body is not giving up the fat that it has unless you put some new fat in. So there are residuals of these drugs and etc. in your fat. Okay, one of the things you see people do is they'll get off a drug and they'll get clean, and they'll say, okay, now I'm going to work out, and the fat releases those microtoxins, those residuals of the drugs, and into the bloodstream. The brain starts running those scripts, and all of a sudden they're using again. You have to thoroughly detox a person completely of all of that. Okay? If you're doing the physical detoxing part. Okay? But here's the thing. If you master knowing where the thought comes from, then you're equal to the task. Do you see this? Like when it hits, if you're already aware of this, you can ride it like a canoe on a bouncy river.
So it all like a toxin or a drug in your body. So I guess you're saying it alters your perception of the way your mind works.
It actually gives you scripts that are your thoughts from the past.
So it changes your interpretation of your own mind.
Recognizing your habitual nature of thinking versus what you want to do in free will.
Right. Habitual thinking versus free will. It's a very good way to put it. Because that habitual thinking is of two sources. Either your habitual rhythm, which is different than your DNA vibration, and the space between is basically disease, right? Okay. That's one way. Okay, but this thing that he's talking about is the other way. Do you see that? It can come at you from different directions. Your job is to know and to discern what's the source while you're getting rid of the stuck stuff.
In the sense of outside influences influencing yourself, like your body versus your mind?
No, so all right.
Like, what would
When
be an example
people are
of an outside source versus like an inside source?
Oh, okay. All right. So the residuals of heroin making you think the same thoughts that you had when you were on heroin.
In a physical sense? What kind of sense?
Like literally thinking it, because that stuck energy also has that information attached.
Kind of like so if I like.
It's a trigger, like he said.
Recognize that it's not your like. Yeah, I guess I understand.
What I'm saying is, if you don't recognize that that's the heroin, and that's the old way of thinking that had nothing to do with reality and led you into more heroin, okay? If you recognize it, then you can say, okay, you know, that is not going to have any power to move me to action. That's what makes the removing of this energy and the emotion that's attached to it. The more emotion that's attached to these things, the more subconscious and underconscious things that are attached to this. See, that's when these scripts get implanted. You're passed out on the couch and your friends are talking junk around. Okay? Et cetera, et cetera. There's, you know, it's that, oh my God, why did I say that?
Knowing what to react, what to just let flow through you, and what to.
Exactly. Because there's stuff that's you and stuff that you know is not of you. But the thought's happening. Okay, that's, I ate too many preservatives because I've been eating frozen food. That, you know, that's, you know, getting yelled at by such and such. That's, you know, growing up in this situation. That's, oh, this car wreck and what happened with it. And this is the law, you know, dealing with this loss of life, or all of these things. Okay? And in drugs, it causes all these other things that re-traumatize you with new traumas. Right? So, but remember, be courageous, because when you pull on one, you pull on a string.
But how do you get to the essence of who you are then? Because, like, if you're just starting the journey, it's so convoluted, you don't even really know who you are at the core, because there's so many of these things influencing you that you haven't taken into account. Like your upbringing, or someone projecting their feelings onto you. Like, so how do you actually get to the essence of who you are if you don't even know what's actually triggering you?
Okay. So, when you get back to this point of being clear, you're getting back to what I call you. Right? Okay, the you is the spirit and the soul coming through the mind. See, with brain injured people, I tell them, yeah, I'm going to give you the ABCs of brain feed. We're going to eat all the right physical stuff and do these things and exercises, right? But really, what's going to make the difference is your mind is going to remake your brain just like it made it the first time. When you learn to discern that thought from this thought. Okay? So it takes practice, it takes paying attention, it takes remembering who you are, okay? And in a lot of ways, deciding who you want to be and accepting no less of yourself or the universe. You declare it. You don't demand it, you command it. Okay? You can hear yourself, trust me. And I hate when people say that. But you're a human being. You can hear yourself.
Do you think that's why isolation is so often associated with like growth and stuff? Like all across cultures, people isolating themselves to get back to that core, so you're not influenced by like other people and factors, like vision class and like monks and like all these people that would just go into isolation and live as a hermit in order to like.
Well, I think solitude is a great and powerful tool. And I think what it gets back to is this notion of environment and how much it affects us. You know the old rat experiments, where they got them addicted.
And they finally gave them other rats to hang out with.
That's right. They made Rat Park. 20 years later, they did all the experiments again, and the rats that were put into an atmosphere of rats that were not addicted, instead of in isolation, where all they had is a grate and a human face every now and then, they instantly stopped being, using the drugs, where before they had instantly just used the drugs until they died. And so we learned that environment is huge, huge, huge. But here's what's really bizarre. There was a step 3. When they let the rats continue to have everything they want and have no stress in their life, right? When they weren't having to hunt for food or all like that, they started turning on each other. It was weird. It was like humans. They started turning on each other. They started having bully rats who were going and taking stuff from everybody. There's enough for everybody, socialist utopia for the rats. There was, this is mine, get away. Right? Bizarre. Rats were forming gangs. Okay? Like I said, they were acting very human. All right? So, solitude is a great thing. Right? But because it's a change of environment. But if you stay a hermit, right, bad things start to happen. So it's a change of environment, not a permanent change of environment. That's important. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking deeper about different things like community and isolation, the benefits of both.
Well, I'm a person, I need solitude. Every morning you'll see me, kind of blocking out the world. I've got the blue pen and the paper, and I'm doing my daily download, as I call it. It's where all the good ideas come from. By the way, blue on white gives you a 30% higher retention level of information. So why are these signs are blue? All right? You can't see, I guess, but the free water sign and stuff, they're blue on white. Okay? So if you're studying in school, you take your notes in black ink on beige or, yellow paper, and the stuff you want to remember for the test, you transfer to white paper with blue ink. 30 points on the 100. All right? Go with the science. Aren't y'all tired of hearing the science? So, we're at 49 minutes now, and I want to make sure this is under 55. It's one of our kind of rules with stuff in the mission. I want to invite you guys to go to tappqi.com and watch this, when it's up. And, join our TapQi Life group if you want. And we study it on a regular basis, and we are able to say more in private membership than we can say in public forums. Because Big Pharma says, disclaimer, nothing that you have heard is medical advice. Okay? That's just how it is. It'll all be disclaimer it on the website, you know, it bites because I get to get out here and I get to tell you my experience and what I've learned. We don't get to fully go into it all, you know, because I can't make financial or medical claims, right? Right? None of this is advice, you know, professional or otherwise. All of that's crap, right? But it doesn't mean that you don't have free choice to go out and study and explore all of this stuff for yourself in your own way, whatever feels comfortable for you, okay? So are there any questions at all left?
Before I learned about tapping some years ago, I just noticed I have a tendency to go to certain spots where I feel a lot of sensations that are associated to certain thoughts.
If you guys can't hear her, she's saying she studied tapping a long time ago, and she figured out that she just naturally gravitated to touching certain parts of her body, tapping certain parts of her body.
And then I also noticed that in conversation with another person, sometimes when they're unloading certain things, sometimes for me to hold space, I'm massaging myself. I feel it in my body, and I want to tend to it. And so my question is, the kind of the pattern that we have here,
That sequence.
the sequence, is it necessary? And how necessary is it to go through that sequence while processing versus other
In
points?
later chapters, we'll learn about the gamut points on the hand, which is something discrete that you can be working with. Remember the kneecaps and this. I mean, you do this subtly and stop. You know, it doesn't often take a lot. Just like, hey, move along.
Have you heard about the,
You know.
sorry.
Yeah. But so there are a lot of points on the body that will work to specific things that you'll learn as we go along. And